Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Stable Talks powered by Bitso Business. Julián, how's it going?
I am very good, Caio, and excited for this episode. Kind of an internal one since like uh, I know a little bit about of this project, but hopefully we can be some more experts in an hour or so.
Yeah, 100%. Today we have a very cool guest. Today we have Thomas from BRL1. How's it going, man?
Okay, very happy to be here with you, Caio. Catching up and lots of things to discuss. With Julian as well. So Bitso, of course, is very close partners and do lots of business together. So it's gonna be good.
It's good. I think like for us to kick off here, I think the good thing is we recently had Ben from MXNB, and now we have you, which is another very cool project doing non-USD stablecoins. I think we have a lot of cool things to discuss. But first of all, not everyone may know you from the industry, so of course, let's do like a quick round of intros. Who are you? What you do at BRL1, and actually what you did before, and how actually did you get involved with the project?
Okay, so Thomaz Teixeira, CEO of BRL1. Okay, before doing stable coins for BRL1, I was doing stable coins of BRL. So just kidding, but yes, I'm stable coin business since 2019. This is a project that we've been uh, building together also with Mercado Bitcoin, Stellar Network, and Central Bank, Drex, CVM, which is Security Commission Brazil. So this is building for a while. Even before that, then it's like financial markets, technology, innovation for 20 years more. I think it's really a continuation of this path. So still, it's pretty much like, okay, how can we do more connecting markets? How can we do more in terms of bringing friction down? How can we do more in terms of actually going borderless? The idea is really to get BRL borderless, being able to allow for Brazilian entities and public and markets to be available for everyone in the world. So this is what I do.
Nice. And so you were saying so like stablecoins is the hottest topic this year, no? And you were one of the pioneers in this world. So my first question is, so why? So what? And I'm referring to why. So like we all use dollars. So like dollar
Mm.
is like an international like settlement tool, like a unit of account, way to spend money. But why the Brazilian real? So why do you think we need a digital representation or a non-chain representation of the Brazilian real? And what are the main use cases you are seeing for this stablecoin?
In a way, I don't want to sound like I'm dodging the question, but would be something like why would people with access to US dollars, okay, be using Tether? Okay. So maybe there's maybe two cases. So you have like the global south with no easy access to real using US dollars. So this is a public that, yes, okay, Tether and USDC and USD stablecoins in general, but the major first comer here is Tether, okay? Uh, so for those who are not easily using USD, Tether is a major solution. And then there's the guys that do have access to USD, like Americans and Europeans and many in the global north, but in general, like markets that are more integrated and easily to have accounts in USD in banks, but want to do it digital because it's efficient, because it's fast, because it's cheap, because it's instantaneous and transparent, and so on. So kind of the same applies to BRL in terms of, okay, so we have a public of Brazilians, okay, or Brazilian companies, Brazilian business, Brazilian traders who think in BRL but want to be in the digital realm. So typically, like we're talking about traders, we're talking about arbitrage, market makers, and all those moving and seeing opportunities in moving among exchanges and among markets, among liquidity pools. So this is a public that they think in real. So if you think that, okay, I'm the digital for the global aspect of it or for the efficiency on chain. why, if I'm thinking in real, why don't I have an option of staying in real? Why must I stay in USD denomination? Okay, this brings me extra risk. If I'm an exporter and because I'm using that because it's fast, because it's very good to use, it's transparent, but all my revenues, let's say, all my sales and so on, is staying in USD denominated stablecoins. Then I saw a real dollar rate comes from 6 to 530, which is like I lost in the last 2 years, good money for like 15, 20% maybe. So this is one reason. So we have Brazilians and Brazilian markets who wants to be on chain, but I don't say need, but benefits a lot from the alternative of having a BRL stablecoin. And then you have the other side, which is you have non-Brazilians who do not have easy access to Pix, BRL bank accounts, or BRL fiat ability. And for them, BRL1 is a very good way for you to be able to be present in Brazilian markets. So again, a bit like in the mirror, but what we saw with USDT, you get people who don't have access to dollars saying, okay, now I have easier access to Tether than I had to dollar cash. And of course, then you have people who have access to dollar cash, but want to be on chain. So these are the main drive, which is, okay, we facilitate BRL on chain, and there's demand for that per se. Okay, there's demand for that per se. Now, we can discuss specifically why would people want to be on chain, or why would non-Brazilians be willing to have a BRL denominated value to move. But this will be all like sub cases of the more general aspect.
Yeah, and following up on what you were talking about, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Some of the things that you were mentioning. So I think in order for us to start, to going deeper on the thesis and how you guys have been pushing, what are the main use cases that you guys have been seeing today? Like, where's the demand coming from mostly?
Mostly it's arbitrage, market making, and liquidity moving between depressed parameters among different markets. So, for instance, we have players who see some price trading at Bitso, and this price provides an opportunity to arbitrage against Mercado Bitcoin or Foxbit or Uniswap. But if you rely on, I don't know, not giving names in any derogative way, okay? But if you rely on USD stablecoin or Solana or other crypto that may be easy to move, you always have some slippage because the price difference you need from, as I said, Bitso price and the other exchanges price, for it to be lucrative enough for it to move, if you have the slippage of USD, then of course you need a higher possibility of arbitrage to start the trade. Now, if you do have BRL to do that and you have zero slippage in pricing, whoever is using that will get that arbitrage first. And usually in arbitrage markets, whoever gets it first, get it all. So we see, we see a good one. That's why, for instance, in Brazil, even though now we are for now only in they're the three most prominent exchanges, but only three exchanges, about 20%, 15% of the Brazilian market. BRL1 is already like top 6 most traded crypto active. And all traders who are using BRL1, all of them, because BRL1 is relatively new, it's 6 months out, all of them have previously used Tether, Circle, Solana. They know how to use it, they have access to it, so it's not something that they did not have an option. All those using that is because it made more business. It made them more profitable, more speed, and more turnover. So this is the main case, which is like really efficiency between different markets.
Cool. And I'm gonna do a disclaimer. I'm the only non-Brazilian from this room, so at least from a foreign perspective. So Brazil is always being seen as a place of innovation, no? Like with Pix and instantaneous payments, open finance, the Drex, no, like which is like last week, Drex like finally closed like the blockchain part. So it's been a back and forth, but like in this kind of innovative system. So, and please correct me if like my vision is not accurate. Like I'm sure like you have critics or different positions on the Brazilian regulators or things, but where does like a stablecoin like BRL1 fit within this landscape? You think like in a future, like these kind of tools can be integrated between each other, that Pix can be combined with a real stablecoin at some point? So where do you see these kind of new tools playing into that system?
Okay, no, great. For a non-Brazilian, you're very aware of what's going on in Brazil. But and
I
it's a
worked,
great question.
I work there, but still I am not a local, so
Yeah, yeah.
I may be biased. Yeah.
No. But still, first, Pix is already integrated. Our whole process, our whole fiat settlement relies on Pix. So if it was not for Pix, we wouldn't be so efficient. Okay. So that being said, so we start from the basics that we leverage on this innovative open finance, open banking, Pix, all those things that have been proactively done by regulators or and together with the market, we rely on that. It's not a competition. Of course, when you say, okay, so that means that you are using BR1 for, I don't know, buying a soda, for Brazilians using it to buy some, going to the restaurant. I think that Pix solves this very, very well. Okay, instant payments in Brazil is a reality. It's something that is very well accepted, very much efficient, and very popular. Now, down the road, there's a possibility that some developments of stablecoins allow for more programmability and more interoperability than necessarily Pix, because Pix, as I said, for transferences is great, but it's not obvious how Pix would, for instance, apply DVP. It's not obvious how Pix would apply multi-assets. How would you use Pix to, I don't know, buy stocks? There's several levels of settlement, clearing, guarantees, orders, execution that rely on that. So I'm not saying that's obvious, but still, when you have different layers operating here, maybe some of that can be programmable and in a multi-asset way that Pix was not designed to do. So for now, day-to-day payments, we're very happy. We're ahead of the curve. Pix is great. I don't think stablecoins should even like try to work too much on that. But there's maybe development on things that Pix do not touch. And also the other part is open finance. Okay, this is something that's very good for us, for instance, to use to be transparent about reserves. Open banking is very good for us to be able to have multi-bank reserve system. So we rely on that. We build on this innovation. Of course, as we build, we help pushing and we help, making sure that we have new applications for that. But absolutely, this environment of Brazil is something that I'm very happy, very privileged to be able to build in this.
I think one of the coolest use cases that I see that might unlock a huge amount of demand is giving access to, especially now, giving access to the Brazilian yield for foreign investors and companies that want to maybe have like BRL into their balances, either as an investment or as a treasury strategy. But of course, we still need to figure out how the regulation will take place, right? Because we recently the central bank published a new regulation regarding VASPs and the stablecoin effects, but for issuers, the things are still to come. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. For example, is there any demand for you guys today in order for you to maybe unlock yield bearing balances through BRL1, or maybe this is something that you guys won't be focused on because of course now we're starting to see globally that even though we see, for example, different USD stablecoins. Each stablecoin has its own strategy. Some of them are yield bearing, some of them are not. So of course, maybe this won't be you guys' focus. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, so first, interest rates in Brazil, even discount inflation, are structurally high. Okay, now it's 15% nominal, but still, it's high. It's been high for many decades. It's gonna be probably high for many years to come. So it's impossible not to mention that when we're talking about holding BRL inventory in Brazil. Okay, so that's a mandatory discussion. Second part is there are clear rules regarding how to distribute and offer investments, securities. So when you talk about yield-bearing instruments, you should have in mind that there are clear rules for that. And sometimes these rules are designed in a way that not necessarily fit with all the best use cases of stablecoins in terms of secondary market, DeFi, on-chain. The securities are something that distribution involves some level of scrutiny and suitability that maybe it's not the best design for DeFi, for instance. Okay, no secret there. So we have to be really careful when we talk about yield-bearing instruments. Now, it doesn't mean that just because of that, you do not factor in the yield, because the yield is there sometimes. And with all due respect, there's some yield-bearing offers of either tokenized deposit, tokenized investments, and so on, which can be their own interesting proposition, okay, and be solid business and very fair offers, okay. But the yield, it's there also to subsidize the infrastructure. So if you're not having, okay, but the user is not getting the yield. The user is not getting the yield, but if the user is getting the experience, is getting the frictionless, is getting the speed, is getting the convenience of stablecoins, and let's say for free, okay, because also it involves that just holding a Polygon wallet with BRL1, you don't have to go to bank account, you don't have to pay monthly fees, you don't have to pay fees. Well, pay some fees for transaction fees, but they're very, very low, okay, in case of many networks. So when you take, okay, they're taking it for free, well, this for free is subsidized by the yield. So the yield, even when you're not talking about the yield directly remunerating the end user, the yield can be present as a form of subsidizing the industry, subsidizing the players who are making sure security is in place, making sure settlements in place, making sure AML best practices are in place. That costs money, of course. So this is something that the yield is always in the conversation. In our case, usually this conversation is like, okay, how can we make sure the yield will compensate and subsidize the different players that are involved? Exchanges who are making the hub and making the markets viable, market makers who are providing liquidity. So the yield is basically being used to foster this ecosystem.
Thomas, and switching topics like to the competition between like private stablecoins and the public one. So, for example, as I mentioned before, like Drex has been in the books since like 2020 or 2021. Like it's been 5 years since, and I think like we are seeing it like slowly dying or like mutating to something different that the concept it was created a couple of years ago. And like you were faster, so you created a stablecoin faster than the central bank, which is not a strange thing, but in a context where the US government is like banning or de incentivizing and like regulating against CBDCs, with Drex mutating in kind of like a non-blockchain CBDC. What's your view on CBDCs? Or like, do you think these private issued stable coins can coexist with central bank digital ones? there are not enough room in countries like Brazil or non-US dollar pegged stablecoins for both projects. So how do you see this coexistence or like this kind of combination in the future?
Okay. First, when I'm faster than the central bank, I was with them. So it was not clear. Maybe all the listeners don't see. Yes, I did issue stablecoin late 2019, 2020 it was live, and then immediately central bank like was okay. Let's look at it together. Okay, and then with Finasbac, which is an amazing innovation foster institution in Brazil. They have the LIFT, which is a laboratory, and this LIFT is part of central bank program of a laboratory of central bank. Okay, and I was there for 6 months. So that was 2020 or 21, and ended up in the publishing of a paper on using stablecoins, digital currency to do FX. So this was and this was very hand in hand with central bank officers and central bank people, and they were very much ahead. I mean, there are people in central bank publishing how to use electronic money in 2016, 2014, 15. So they're very, very active. Of course, making a business of it, it's not really their motto, right? But then in this sense, I was really with Drex. I'm a big fan of the Drex movement. So the Drex was more like, okay, how can we make sure, of course, one interpretation, right, is how can I make sure that we get Brazilian rules, Brazilian values, Brazilian laws, also valid and also fostering the digital environment. How can I do that on chain? Because, okay, central bank is regulating is Brazil financial markets with lots of rules, lots of things that apply, but it's also fostering with Pix, with open finance as we discussed. And they're like, okay, how can we foster this innovation on chain? On chain is really here to come. It's not some like a mad craze that's gonna pass in a couple of years. How can I do that? So Drex was in this direction. Okay, how can I make sure that we have a tokenized economy, we have more DVP, we have more competition, we have more innovation, and this is kind of the motto I see in Drex, and that's still there. Now, the path that initially was experimented in pilot was, okay, how do we do that? We'll make a sanctioned, official, permissioned version of Hyperledger Bezel, which is EVM compatible, and within that, there will be kind of vetoed or approved smart contracts and movements and operations within this network, and those operations and these smart contracts will begin with a pre-approved seal by central bank. Okay, that was kind of the vision. Among one of the applications and among one of the uses that they have was, okay, and part of that will be tokenized real. And the tokenized real would be kind of a wholesale version of it. So it would be just for authorized participants, so on. So all that to say that this is one possible version of saying, okay, this would be Brazil CBDC. And still, it's not exactly a CBDC full-fledged, because then the banks or the authorized participant would have to bridge that into different settlement and clearing. And in a, I wouldn't say DeFi, but a more decentralized manner in other chains. So even this version is something that's very specific, and I do not find easy to talk about CBDCs in general, because there's no such CBDC live out there. It's very hard to say, okay, what do you really mean? Are we talking about central bank allowing directly unidentified addresses or even verified addresses to hold liability directly against central bank's balance sheet? I haven't seen any proposition like this, any proposition like this, and even the milder tone, which is like I said, okay, we allow some authorized players to have access to this primary market, and then the secondary market is not exactly CBDC. Even this more constrained primary market, I don't see any actual initiative of CBDC out there. Okay, I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's several complex implications in doing so, and I don't think that's necessarily a path that's going to be traveled. Now, either if it's on the privacy or because even if you say, okay, let's talk about the full-fledged pure CBDC, Satoshi CBDC, let's say, well, Satoshi would kill me if she heard that or whatever. But anyway, even then, in what networks? All networks? What are we talking about here? There's always going to be, even if there is some form of that, and even if it's the most active central bank, blah, 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 there's still new networks, new developments, new protocols, new forms that are coming that won't be able to do it ever. So even in this situation, we would still need something which is close to CBDC, which is bridging central bank money, whatever form it is, to a digital decentralized use. So in this sense, it's almost mandatory. If you do have CBDC, then it's mandatory to have a stablecoin. If not, I'm not saying stablecoins necessarily a must, but with CBDC, yes. So they have to live together. Now, in the case of Drex, the unwinding of the part that, okay, let's go to the path of sanctioning a permission version of Hyperledger Bezel. In this case, yes, stablecoins work very much as a synthetic solution for that, because then you have, it's not exactly central bank balance sheet, but you have central banks approve entities, financial institution accounts, and direct obligations as reserves of collateral that backs the stablecoin. So in the sense, it's a synthetic version of that. So I think it's very much the continuation. Now we'll see how central bank will play with the initiative of, okay, let's foster the tokenized economy, digital environment, so on. They'll find other forms to do that, and I'm happy to say that I'll be working all I can to be involved and to be helping, as they helped me a lot. So no doubt, count on me for that.
Yeah, that's great. I think adding up in this topic, I think one of the coolest things that we can see, of course, as the market develops, is and of course, this was heavily the main topic of Drex, right? How can we not bridge actually, how can we bring programmability into the capital markets too? And one of the coolest things that I'm seeing from the usage, of course, payments is one of the main use cases, but otherwise, one of the coolest things that I'm seeing of these non-USD stablecoins are how DeFi protocols have been, importing these assets and creating new product on top of that. For example, lending and borrow protocols. Of course, some of them are also offering different products such as stablecoin-backed cards denominated in BRL2, or even maybe just using the BRL stablecoin to then move the funds to a USD denominated balance. But otherwise, I think this is a very, very cool thing. Adding on this topic, I would love to hear your thoughts. Like William mentioned, we had the Drex situation that happened recently. In parallel, we have a very even though not that big, but fastly evolving tokenization ecosystem in Brazil. We have a few companies that already has been tokenizing RWAs for a while here, either as an infrastructure and or as a marketplace to give access to alternative assets. I know some of them have been using a kind of BRL stablecoin, even though only for internal purposes. So how do you think, especially after this drag situation, do you think BRL stablecoins would take the place of what the digital real was supposed to be in when it comes to the capital markets?
In part, yes, but there's a huge gap left, which is when you have the permission network that central bank was proposing or something like that, it is very helpful to connect to siloed markets. Like in Brazil, you have like a car financing market or financial products market or credit card refinancing. In a way, financial products, of course, financial products was a main thing because central bank was involved, but also securities in terms of I was involved in a pilot that were doing financing of green or environmental projects in the Amazon, for instance, leveraged by CBDCs, but leveraged by the Drex network. Okay, so of course, stablecoins could fill the role of the tokenized money here, but without the Drex network, we are moving some steps back in terms of, okay, now we have to solve how do you get the car financing and guaranteeing and collateral connected to, I don't know, Polygon, for instance. How do you do that? That's not obvious. How do you take financial products connected to decentralized protocols? With Hyperledger Bezel sanctioned by central bank, it was much easier. You say, look, you plug your log registration authorization system to this network. We know the API, so on. That's it. The registry of car loans, backed loans, are now automatically being registered in a network that has a tokenized money on it. So the tokenized money, let's say, in this sense, is something that, yes, stablecoin can be there. But now, the other part, which is the registration of several siloed markets, that's going to be a bit slower. So we'll be probably talking about some more restricted application than would be possible with the Drex network.
And Thomas, you surface a lot of times like the issue of interoperability, like not only among chains. So, for example, if you have like BRL1 on Polygon and like you want to make like a payment on like a Arbitrum or like whatever, like this is a kind of things that like developers build up on, and there are bridges and so on and so forth. But let's say, hey, you have like BRL1 on Polygon, and then like you want to pay in MXNB to a Mexican customer or to a Mexican provider. At some point, do you think that a new spec stablecoin will be needed in the middle, or you imagine like this kind of non-USD experiences can coexist and can combine and work together without the need of having the US dollar in the middle?
That's a good one. While I'll get to there, but first you mentioned the interoperability of chains. Okay, this is something that has to be very carefully done. Okay, for us, in our case, we are partnering with Juno, and of course we all know Juno here, but with issuance of MXNB and very strong relationship with Bitso as well, but in part because Juno does a very good job and very careful job in mint and burn of automated process. Okay, and within Juno there's some multi-chain capabilities, and we would leverage on that. So just moving on chain is something that is very, even though it's programmable, it's very delicate and has to be done very carefully. So this part we do with careful of interoperability between chains. We do careful selection of, in cases of Juno, a company, but not only that, of processes, of protocols and things like that. Now, in terms of currency, cross-currency, okay, liquidity is something that has a kind of a life of its own. So it's just not because we want that we can do direct good pricing in MXNB BRL1. Okay, because of course part of the structure that's needed to have a fair pricing, which is connected markets, settling, DVP, clarity of pricing, and platforms that provide good books. It's there. Well, it's not fully there, but for instance, Bitso is one that, Julian, I'm pressing and I rely on Bitso to make it happen, but Bitso have made it happen for many other cases. But yes, Bitso, for instance, is totally able to provide a reliable, good platform that will have a MXNB BRL1 book. Okay, so this part is something that we can do. Now, pricing is sort of a relative information of value of two different assets, right? And the faster and the more thorough the information flow, the most fair and the most like smaller spreads usually, the most accurate the pricing can be. So when you're talking about MXNB and BRL1, or even MXN and BRL, okay, how much, one important thing we're fixing is the surface, the context surface here. So when Bitso is building a book, we're making a new context surface that they will interact. And this is very good for, so the prices of BRL and MXN reflect on that, and interacting, they can offer a good way to move from one to the other. Now, in terms of flow, for instance, the flow, the movement of MXN to USD, because the economies are so connected, because of the remittance, because of the tourism and everything that goes, it's much stronger than BRL MXN. You know, so Brazil and Mexico, even though we are very good friends, we don't do as much business as Brazil US or US Mexico, right? So and this much business being done means lots of money moving, and when this money is moving from one country to the other, it's leaving a track of this information of relative prices. So the flow of information of how many reais are needed to buy a dollar or MXN, this is so constant and so reliable and in a volume that when I get to, okay, let's make sure I want to get BRL and I want to go to Mexico, then I say, okay, good. If I want to do that in a volume that's big enough, maybe I'll find out that in order to tap in that amount of liquidity, it may still be more liquid or more price information efficiency to go to USD and then USD MXN. So this is something that what we do is we make sure we get more efficient communication of pricing. We do that by making books, by making good market platforms, so on. But ultimately, it's something that in order to provide enough liquidity for that, and then it's like the depth. Of course, you can say, okay, let's say, I don't know, the fair rate would be 3 to 1, whatever. You can get fair rate, and this can be good for, let's say, individuals doing small trades. But eventually, when you're talking a block trade, it may not be exactly the kind of things that you can hedge out. Because players who are making this market, usually they are not taking position themselves. They are immediately hedging out. So if you do that, they'll probably try to hedge out where it's more liquid. So for a while, I think that the MXNB BRL1 market will tap into MXNB, I don't know, USDC and BRL1 USDC markets, and in time we'll get that, okay, for many users the experiences go straight, but there will be still some cases that, you know, while it's not totally efficient and totally transparent and totally free movement world, we'll still see something that ultimately depends on those liquidities, those bilateral liquidities.
Yeah, I think this topic is pretty cool. It's something that we always talk about, right? When talking about non-USD stablecoins, how do you do the so-called on-chain effects, right? But still have these challenges, like you mentioned, the liquidity between these non-USD stablecoins. And you end up kind of replicating the stablecoin sandwich, but instead of using a fiat to fiat, you use a local stablecoin, then go to another local stablecoin, but still pass through
Yeah,
AUSD
but
stablecoin, right?
yeah, but I don't want to put down here the very important fact that just because you're able to move one to the other, this is great. You don't have to actually go. I mean, I don't know. Years ago, if I'm going to Mexico, I would probably go to the bank here and buy US dollars and then get to Mexico and then exchange. So now I can go straight and get MXNB. This is great. And I'll have my wallet MXNB. And the day I'm moving out of Mexico, I'll move back to Real. And that's it. I'm fine, you know. So this is great. I'm just saying that maybe for a while, this process is relying in a more global liquidity. And that's, we mentioned USD, but also it can be apply also to China. It applies to other currencies as well. Because what matters is that if it's liquid enough and it's very easy to navigate, information will flow for the best price, and information will get a fair pricing. You know, so it is very good to be able to move directly, but that does not mean that okay, let's this is skipping or leaving USD liquidity out of it.
I agree, and I think like the contribution has been already made because at the past, like when I was a kid and I want to travel to Brazil as well, I had to go to the bank and like buy reais, buy crusaders first, and then buy reais. But yeah, and I like currencies were always priced with the USD in the middle. But at least I think we are making a contribution now because like the liquidity is way cheaper than before, you know, and because these flows of information, maybe like at some point, like you used to lose like 2, 3, even 5% between like Argentinian pesos and Brazilian reais. And now like that kind of exchange, even with the US dollar in the middle, kind of arbitraging the currencies is way cheaper than before. And that's mostly thanks to the flow of information and like global liquidity players knowing how much to charge or like how much others are charging as well. So yeah, yeah.
Yes, and absolutely. That's when we talk about making BRL borderless. And I know it's kind of a sort of a joke, but then when you went back to Mexico and you realize you have reais, that's it. You're dead with reais. If you have cruzeiros, forget it, right? Well, if you have cruzeiros now, it's a collector's item.
I'm way
But
too old for our crypto audience. Yeah, I know.
yeah, well, but but still, so now it's something that you don't have to say, okay, I'm leaving Brazil, I have to get rid of it now. Okay, it's fine. You know you can have in your digital wallet and maybe swap for MX a week from now, 2 weeks from now. Maybe you buy more because you're coming back to Brazil. So this is something that we're providing alternatives. We're providing new options for people here, which is very good. It's much better than we had. So this is, I agree with you. It's a positive contribution I think we're making.
Yeah, all good. Like, I think we could be here for hours to, continue this conversation. Unfortunately, we need to stop here. But Thomas, we'd love to say I'm very thankful for you to join our podcast. It was a very cool conversation. I think non-USD stablecoins, of course, there's still a path to follow, but I think this most definitely will be the next wave of evolution in the ecosystem. I think we're even scratching the surface of the potential of non-USD stablecoins. I think there are a lot of opportunities in the space, like you mentioned, arbitrage, trading, payments, investment, a lot of things. So I think you guys are doing a great job. And yeah, just want to thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed too.
No, it's a pleasure. Caio, I know we've been arranging this for a while, conversations, and Julian as well. Thank you for very much for having me and uh, having this exchange of ideas. For me, it's great, and I follow the podcast also. I also very happy to be very proud to be here.
Thanks again, Thomas, and for everyone listening, don't forget to subscribe. There's a new episode every now and then, so listen and share with your folks and with your friends. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Caio.
That's it. See ya.
You guys.